Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. This is the second part of the series that I had started with regards to answering the question of whether or not religion is the main cause of violence and conflict in human history. In the first part, I provided clear evidence from the analysis of all the different conflicts and wars in the documented human history, showing that religion is only the cause in a very small percentage of all the conflicts of mankind. And this is unrefutable evidence based on real facts from the documented history, which nobody can argue against. Today, I would like to give you just one example of what could happen in case war takes place or happens between two rivals who have no religious values that control or refine their behavior. The two dictators I would like to talk about today are Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin. Some people may think that Adolf Hitler was a Christian, but in reality, the consensus of historians is that Adolf Hitler was actually an atheist, that he was anti-Christian, he was anti-religious in general. Joseph Stalin was an open atheist, as you all know, and he was anti-religious as well. He was a materialistic individual who only believed in this life. Same for Adolf Hitler, but Hitler was not as obvious in his atheistic views as was Stalin. Actually, he hid under the cover of what he called progressive Christianity, but all his comrades and people and friends who lived with him at the time gave their testimonies that he was an atheist, hiding behind the guise of Christianity. He led an anti-religious campaign in his country, a covert one, while Stalin led an overt anti-religious campaign in his country as well, that resulted in the death and persecution of millions who wanted to adopt a religion. But it was against the law in Stalin's Russia at the time. Joseph Stalin led an anti-religious campaign that resulted in the death of more than 20 million people inside of Russia alone. The number of churches during his reign in Russia, the Orthodox churches in Russia, fell from 29,584 to only less than 500 churches during the reign of Joseph Stalin. So here we have a conflict that is going to happen between these two dictators who have no religious values whatsoever. You can now ponder and see the amount of destruction, the amount of cruelty, the lack of mercy, the lack of humanity, and the absence of human values when such peoples with such beliefs, anti-religious beliefs, rule their countries and then go into conflict with each other. I will not mention the different wars that occurred during World War II, but I will just give you an example of one single battle, which was called Operation Barbarossa, or Operation Fritz, F-R-I-T-Z. This battle started on June 22nd, 1941, and it continued for several years. It was the attempt by the Red Army led by Hitler to invade Russia. Historians tell us that this is the biggest single military operation in human history that witnessed unprecedented devastation, destruction, death, and war crimes compared to any other conflict in human history. War crimes varied from executions to placing people in concentration camps and starving them to death, to sexual violence, including rape and group rape, to using human beings as items for medical and surgical experiments while they were alive. Imagine that. It is just basically unimaginable cruelty that even the wild animals would not engage into or would not engage in. It was open genocide carried out mostly by the Red Army led by Hitler. This battle alone resulted in the death of 26 million Soviet people and more than 8.6 million of the Red Army. So you can look throughout history, you will not find a single battle or multiple battles that could possibly have religious causes behind them that would have led to as much destruction, devastation, death, and cruelty as compared to this one single battle. Actually, if you add up all the battles, all the religious wars in human history, including the Crusades and all the religious conflicts in modern history and even in past history, the number of casualties, the deaths, the cruelty, the starvation that happened to the people, the open executions would not even come near to be compared to this one single battle that was led by two anti-religious, atheistic, materialistic people on the opposing sides. Another point I would like to talk about when it comes to religion and violence, we have to also look at research provided by scientists who specialize in psychology, sociology, and political sciences. I would like to recommend to you an important research paper on this topic. It's basically a comprehensive review study by the title of Empirical Perspectives on Religion and Violence by Joshua Wright and Yuli Khoo, Khoo, from the Department of Psychology at the University of Western Ontario. This is a huge research paper that reviewed almost all the research in this field. Is religiosity linked to violence? They've reviewed more than 100 different studies in that single study. This study falls in more than 48 pages. And I think I would like to quote to you some of their findings. They've come to the conclusion from that large review study that, and I'll just actually read to you their findings. They say, following an evaluation of the scientific literature on religion and violence, we argue that whatever evidence links specific aspects of religion with aggression and violence, these aspects are not unique to religion. What they mean by that is that the aspects that lead to violence that has a religious banner, those aspects are actually not unique to the religion, but they are features of human psychology and social interactions. Whenever a group of people with a certain identity, be it a religious identity or a national identity or a sexual identity, feel some form of threat to their very existence or to their values, that is when any kind of human being may react with some form of aggression, which he would perceive as self-defense. So those aspects that seem to link religion with violence are not unique to religion. Actually, they've concluded from that study that numerous aspects of religion, that there are numerous aspects in religion that actually buffer against aggression and violence amongst its adherents. Religion teaches people to be merciful. Religion in general teaches people that all human beings are brothers and sisters in humanity. Religion teaches people that all human beings are equal, that we are all the sons of Adam. Religion teaches people not to be arrogant. Religion tells people that if they are merciful to God's creation, God's children, as mentioned in the Bible, then God would have mercy on them. These aspects and those general principles of religion are universal to all religions. You will find them in Judaism, you'll find them in Christianity, you'll find them in Islam, and many texts can be quoted in this from each single religion. Those are general moral aspects in all these religions. They actually have also concluded that the most distinct feature of religion, which is supernaturalism, is associated with reduced aggression and violence. So here we've provided you with all the historical evidence. Now we are providing you with evidence derived from psychological, social, and political studies as well to prove this case. Because this claim is basically reiterated so often that people tend to believe it without any evidence to support it, that religion is associated or is the main cause of violence. Another study on this matter says that threats towards Muslim identity were associated with anti-Western hostilities. Similar results were found in a study assessing reactions to threats towards one's gender and national identities. And I've provided you the references for these studies and citations in the talk that I have placed the link for below this video. Actually, studies have also shown that secular groups can also exhibit fundamentalist beliefs and react violently, in part due to these beliefs. For example, fundamentalist thinking is exhibited in both extremes of political spectrum. And we see this all the time. We've seen violence happen, we've seen violence happen in the States between two extremes of the political spectrum, in many instances. Also, there's something called eco-terrorism. That's not related to religion whatsoever. Also, another study says that blind religious zealotry is similar to unfettered nationalism. People commit violence in the name of national identity. They feel threat towards their national identity, and they react violently to anybody who they think poses a threat to that. And we've seen that happen over and over again in many countries. This last quote actually was made by a person who's trying to make a claim against religion, trying to prove that religion is the main cause of violence. But in his book, this researcher or writer, his name is Kimball, and his book is titled as When Religion Becomes Evil. In that same book, he contradicts himself by saying that blind religious zealotry is similar to unfettered nationalism. So basically, he admits and concedes to the fact that it is not religion. This can happen to any kind of group that identifies themselves with a certain feature or certain character when they feel that this or that their principles are under threat. Other researchers such as Wright, Achterberg, and Esses, they have concluded that denigration of national identity resulted in greater aggression relative to both denigration of religion and relative to denigration of religion. So here they found that actually people who hold very extreme nationalistic views, they can be more aggressive and more violent. And actually, the war that I talked to you about earlier between Hitler and his people and Stalin was basically caused by the fact that Hitler felt that the Germanic race was superior to the Slavic race. And he felt that this Slavic race had to be subjugated to the Germanic race, either exterminated or they would be servants and slaves to the Germanic race. So we can see how human beings may behave in the total absence of religious values. Also, an important cause of violence is the restrictions imposed by governments on religious groups or groups in general, regardless of their identity. A study has found that more government restrictions on religious groups are associated with more religious hostilities. And the most violent regions in the world reflect the most government restrictions towards religion. And that is basically in the Middle East. And I had mentioned to you before that the cause of recurrent violence in the Middle East is not caused by the presence of Islam in the Middle East, but caused by the dictatorships and those authoritarian governments that impose so many restrictions on the people's freedoms, including the freedom of religion.